We've got our little timer going, which means that it must be go time. It must be live. What is going on, the Dad Bod Project family? We are jumping on for another live, another exclusive chat with a special guest. But before I allow my special guest to introduce herself, then what I will get you to do is to let me know if you are watching this as a live, then give us a hashtag live. And if you are going to be watching this as a replay, then make sure you give us a hashtag replay. I am super excited to chat with my special guest today on a topic that is very, very common, yet very commonly not, is commonly a word? Not sure. Commonly not ever spoken about, and not really, it's kind of like one of those things that happens in the background of people's lives, and maybe they're not even really that conscious of why it is going on in the background of their life. But we are talking about men and our porn addiction. And I am super excited to ask heaps of questions, as being, I'll share a bit of my story after you introduce yourself, Catherine. But yeah, I'm super excited to have you on here, and thank you so much for your time, Catherine.
Thanks for having me.
You are welcome. So do you want to share a little bit of an introduction on who Catherine Lyle is, why you got into this area, how it all came about?
Sure. So I'm in Melbourne, based in Melbourne, but I treat guys all over the world. I'm a men's health and porn addiction specialist. I'm a kinesiologist, intuitive healer, medical medium, psycho-spiritual therapist, massage therapist. I also teach my modalities, and I have a number of books as well. So I've got programs as well that I help guys with internationally. And I've been doing this for probably about 8 years full time now, and I've been a kinesiologist for over 15. Used to be in corporate for 20 years and doing this on the side. So this was my calling, and the reason I got into men as a niche is because I was on the dating scene and I kept having guys say to me, "You seem to know men better than men know themselves." And they just kept saying it, and I just kept getting the messages from the universe that this is what had to happen. So I set up a men's healing centre, alternative health centre in Chelsea, and we had a number of practitioners working in there, and it was the only one in Australia. So it was pretty cool, but it didn't work because the practitioners didn't know enough about business, and it wasn't your typical clinic where there was a receptionist and things like that. So we closed that down, and I've been working from home ever since. The reason I got into porn addiction was because I dated someone for 3 weeks, which felt like a lifetime, which he's in all my books. I call him the porn angel because he was the messenger. So I had, at the same time, I had a porn addiction specialist contact me in the centre and say he wanted to come and work for me. And I actually hadn't flagged it at that point, either in my personal life or my professional life, even though I was treating men. And he started to cry when I interviewed him, and he was blown away with the work that I was doing. And so there was some kind of synergy going on there. And he explained to me a few things. We had lots of phone conversations. He didn't end up coming to work in the clinic, but he opened my eyes to what was going on. So I started to do some research, and I changed a form. Like one little to say, do you watch porn? And 100% of men were ticking it. So I was already seeing erectile dysfunction and mental health issues and all of those type of things, but I didn't actually realize what the cause was. And then I dated this guy who told me outwardly that, he had a porn addiction in the past, and that it was so severe that he wouldn't share details with me. And I was all like, oh, I don't really want to know this. Like, I don't want to be your practitioner. And but it was like the two of those two men coming into my life at the same time just put all of the links back in the chain, and I started doing research online. So I started a survey where it's still going and we're collecting data from men that watch porn. There's like 64 questions or something. And so that's been running for years, since 2017, 2018. And here we are. Now I'm like Australia's leading porn addiction specialist, if not in the world, because I'm the only one doing what I'm doing. And that's treating the men. I'm not just an academic. I'm not just a coach. I'm not just doing a cerebral kind of chat online and things like that, telling people to have cold showers and take up a new habit. I'm actually treating the clients with integrated massage therapy, kinesiology, activating Kundalini, and researching the mind-body connections.
Nice. I
Nice.
love that. What an
How's
introduction.
that?
I can't help but to keep thinking as a man usually would about the 3 week
The 3-week
relationship.
guy.
Like far out.
Yeah.
What?
Because he
How well?
kept saying to me, I've got erection issues, but I don't think it's going to be a problem because, when you kiss me, it's okay. And he was saying I have anger issues, I've got mental health issues, and so he was very forward in his problems, I guess. And I had never met anyone like that before, and so I was like, this is great. But what he didn't realize was all of the symptoms that he had weren't connected to he wasn't connecting it to the porn addiction. So he had just mentioned that he was watching a lot of porn, but then, I would lay in bed with him and he'd be scrolling through Facebook and all the girls bent over and they got their boobs out. And, I've got a daughter and he's got 2 daughters. And so the girls were around us and he was doing this while they were around. And, then he started saying things like, I really want you to wear this. And he would send me a photo of like I'm going to say blonde bimbo in a hot pink dress with black high heels and her boobs are like out here. And so he started to try and control the way that I looked and dressed in 3 weeks and started to say, like, you'd look hot with your hair braided, or you'd look hot. And he kept pointing out other women and saying that I should do that. And I got really insecure. And then I turned around to him and said, hang on a second. I am who I am. I'm a classy, amazing, just back off. And so we broke up. And so he was the porn angel. He came in with the message that I needed, and he had all the symptoms that I needed to then start this journey for other men. So it's pretty cool. Everyone thinks I'm a bit bitter and twisted, and that I must be a woman scorned because I am a woman in this field, but he's the only one that I've met that was watching porn that I know of. So just to make that clear.
Yeah, of course. And before I get into some of the questions that I'd love to ask you, Catherine, and for everyone to be obviously listening in on, I've openly shared that I actually had I don't know to what degree, if there even is such a thing, of an addiction to porn. And I've shared this story, but I think it's worth kind of bringing up the story again and how it all began for me. So what used to happen back in the day is I was a part of a whole bunch of group chats on WhatsApp. And we would just be sharing all kinds of random videos of like car racing, and then just like fights on the street, and just like random videos and stuff. And then what would happen is obviously there would be porn mixed in there as well. And I, as a man, I didn't even really think anything of it. I'm like, yeah, it's kind of cool to see it, it's cool to watch the videos. And then I just kind of found myself, if we fast forward me consuming that, it would get to a point where there was, on a daily basis, there was so much porn being forwarded in that group chat. And there was kind of the laughs, the giggles. Oh my God, what is she doing? What is she wearing? Why would she do that? Or, all of those kinds of remarks. And then it would get to a point, and it's interesting how this happened. Is, I didn't even really I wasn't even conscious and aware of it, but it would get to a point that because I'd become so used to seeing the porn and enjoying watching the videos, that when they weren't being shared on a daily basis with the amount of frequency, I would actually go and seek out to the ones that would usually forward it and be like, hey, where is it?
And I'm where's my medicine?
Yeah, like where's my stuff? And then I thought to myself, well, that's pretty bad that like I'm going around searching for it. And I would mask it as like a bit of a joke, but realistically I'm like, I'm not joking. Like where Where is it?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and it's not until one of my really good friends, and this was something that was really profound for me. He actually sent me a 20-minute video. If I can find it, Catherine, I'd love to send it to you, because I'm
Sure.
sure it's all the stuff that you know as well, but it would be a good reminder. This guy here, it was about a 20-minute video just talking about his addiction to porn, and similar to me, how I was just, in a group chat, messages, being forwarded left, right, and center, videos of the porn nature, and he was explaining the damage it actually does at a kind of at the that it can do at a brain, like at a brain level. And what he
Yeah.
said was that it's the effects, the damaging effects on the brain that porn can have is very similar to drug use. And I'm like, what? And
Correct.
because like it's just like it blown my mind, because previous to watching that video, I was under the impression, as I think a lot of men are with porn and their consumption of it, is that it's kind of like not the best for relationships, because it retrains, your, like you mentioned, the idea of what sex and intimacy is, and all of that. So I thought maybe like from a social perspective it wasn't the
Mm.
best, but I didn't really understand from a kind of physiological perspective of how much damage it could potentially do. And once I had heard him say that the effects can be similar, the damaging effects on your brain can be similar to somewhat of someone that has been taking cocaine or heroin, I'm like, oh my god, like my mind was actually blown, because I'm like, the
Yeah.
whole reason why I decided, because I had a little bit of a coke addiction as well back in the day, and the whole reason why I stopped doing that as well is so that I obviously didn't fry my brain. And here I was in doing the
Yeah.
exact same thing with a different substance, and I'm like, nah, no way.
Yeah.
As soon as I watched that, I made a decision that I was never ever going to watch another single minute of porn ever again, because it's just like
Yeah.
it's not worth like damaging the brain for. It's like, yeah, it might feel good, and get that dopamine rush, but I mean, like, Jesus, like fucking damaging the brain for watching a few minutes of porn, like, no thank
Yeah.
you. So that's when I went completely cold turkey on it. And not only that, but I started preaching to all the boys. I started
Yeah.
preaching to all the boys, saying like, did you know this? Did you know that? So I turned into like the modern day vegan, how they're trying to
Yeah. The
trying
reformed
to
smoker.
yeah, trying to like tell
Yeah.
everyone. And what was interesting as well is I needed to make a decision that I needed to tell the people that were sharing this in the group, like, to no longer send it to me. And it was interesting because I was at this kind of junction in the situation where I could have just like made something up and just said like, don't send
Yeah.
it because
I'm
of
sick.
some kind of lie, and
Yeah.
like, it's against whatever my religious
Yeah.
beliefs or whatever it may be. Or like I could just tell the truth and be like, I don't want to do it because I don't want to fucking damage my
Yeah.
my brain. So I was kind of
Yeah.
like tossing up the thing, and I'm like, you know what, fuck it, I'm just going to tell the truth, and I'm
Yeah.
just going to say like, don't send it to me anymore. And of course they stopped and they respected that decision. And since then, I think it's probably been a year and I haven't watched a single minute of porn. And
Amazing.
I don't. Initially it was tough because obviously I was getting triggers to watch it and all of that, as any addiction I'm sure has.
Yeah.
But nowadays I don't even really think about it, to the point that my wife didn't even believe me when I told her that I was never going to watch porn
Yeah.
ever again, and she's like, "Yeah, right."
Yeah.
but but
Yeah.
here we are. So that was my kind of little journey
Mm.
within porn and its addiction. And what I found quite interesting is that I don't think anyone ever that has a porn addiction, even for the most part, even knows that it's an addiction. Because in my
Correct.
mind, it was just like, I'm having a laugh with the boys. We're watching a few porno videos, and that's as
Yeah.
far as it went in my mind. But then when I look back now and how much of it I was actually consuming, it made me realize like it's not just like a casual amount of, and that's probably one of my questions as well, is there even like a healthy consumption amount of it, or is it literally like stay away from it and do not consume it? So we'll get into that question in a second. But
Yep.
my first question, Catherine, is why is porn so bad for us men, and how does it go beyond, like I was saying, the moral dilemmas on, you know, how it rewires our idea of what a functioning sexual relationship is? And if we could start with that question, that would be awesome.
Sure. So I don't come from a moral perspective because I'm a woman. This hasn't been easy in my field, and anyone that works in this field has had problems in terms of the type of people that you attract and the criticisms and the sexual harassment and things like that. So I never stood on my soapbox and said, you all need to stop watching porn from a woman's perspective and from that moral side of things, because the age-old conversation that porn isn't real is we're so far past porn isn't real. And if you're having those conversations with your kids, then you're not having the right conversations. So porn addiction is classified as addiction if you are watching it regularly, which is once a month or more. And most people their jaw will drop and they'll be like, what are you talking about? So by textbook definition in the psychology world, if you can't go without something for a month, then you have an addiction. Right. And so then everyone goes, oh, well, we're all addicted to everything. And that's correct. But that's just the definition on that side of things. But I also I've treated over 4,000 men now. And, you get a lot of on-the-job training and a lot on-the-job research. And if like men in their 60s and 70s, for example, who are only watching it once a month, but they're masturbating once a month, and they're not masturbating without it, and they haven't masturbated without it since they can't remember, and they've been watching it for 55 years, then you absolutely have a porn addiction. So this is a scale, obviously. At one end of the scale is once a month or more. And then at the other end of the scale is someone who I've treated who was watching it between 30 and 36 times a day, every day. And he was 16. And when I got that phone call, I didn't realize he was 16 because his voice was very deep and he was an American. So he had that American deep voice, and I thought I was talking to a man. And when he said 36 times a day, I actually stopped and thought he said 6, and even that's a lot. And he said, no, 36. And it was every day on the school holidays. And when he said school holidays, I was like, hang on a second, how old are you? And he said 16. So I couldn't treat him, but 2 years later, he's 18 now, and he's had a double hip replacement. He's got an autoimmune disease. He's had a bone marrow transplant. There's massive issues there with trauma and stuff because he saw it when he was 5, and it was connected to trauma with his stepdad, I think it was, and his sister, and all of those things. So that is the scale, and we look at other variables, but the very baseline is once a month or more. Okay, then we look at how often are you masturbating without porn, and if it's 0, then you absolutely hands down have a porn addiction. And then we look at how long you've been watching it for, and most guys that I treat are in there between 20 and 70, and so you're looking at 20, 30, 40, 50 year porn addictions. So that's how we classify it. And I've got, like you said, people don't understand that this can be addictive, or that they do have an addiction. They don't associate with the word addict or addiction. I've had guys that are watching it 3 times a day still be like, really? I've got an addiction? And so many guys text me saying, I don't have a porn addiction. And I'm like, just tell me how often you're watching it. And I was like, it's only every day. It's only once a day. It's only once a day. It's like, what do you define as a porn addiction, right? So I don't come from the moral perspective, even though I do in my book, and we address toxic masculinity and sex trafficking and, kids and all of the pedophilia and all of the stuff that's connected to porn. However, I come from a science perspective. So I'm happy to tell you now, if you want, what a porn addiction actually is, because until you get this information, you'll never want to quit because you don't understand. Like you said, the trigger for you was, this is giving you brain damage. It's actually worse than heroin addiction in terms of brain damage. Just let me say that. So I say to my clients, we're going to now replace the word porn with heroin. Would you let heroin into your relationship? Would you give your kids heroin? Right? So you have to start thinking of this as a drug addiction because it's exactly the same. And the way that works is when you watch porn, say you're 17 and you've got a smartphone, because it's a lot different to the guys who would look at a magazine or a VHS, once every now and then. These kids have porn in their pockets, and they're all impotent. They've got social anxiety, performance anxiety. They've never even kissed a woman, and they can't even get it up anymore, and they're only 17. Right? So these kids aren't even finishing school, and they're absolutely brutalized by porn. So say you're 17 and you get a smartphone and you watch porn every single day for a week. That's all it takes. You are now addicted to porn. If you took cocaine every single day for a week, you're not going to die. But what happens is you get a rush of chemicals and hormones. So you get the dopamine, the serotonin, and the oxytocin are the main ones. You then get tunnel vision, which is where, someone might be pulling up in the driveway and you're close to orgasm and you just keep going. Or someone that has autism, ADHD, depression or anxiety may stay in that tunnel for a long period of time and what we call go down the rabbit hole and be looking at porn for hours and hours and hours on end, because they don't want to come out, because the endorphins and the opiates and all the good stuff is in the tunnel when you go in there, right? So you get this hit of chemicals and hormones. Dopamine is what we call the novelty drug. I like what I see and I want to see more of it. We're all addicted to our phones. The little red numbers that pop up, you've got to clear the little red numbers. It's like a game, right? And it's like there's stuff happening behind that. Like, oh, someone's texted me. Oh, I've got a message. Oh, my post is really popular. So those are like little dopamine hits, right? But the dopamine with porn is so big because you are masturbating with it at the same time normally, right? So it creates a big fireworks display in the brain. And if you accompany anything with pleasure, you cannot get a bigger fireworks display than that, right? And because it's sexual in nature and you're masturbating, then you've got this massive, massive surge of dopamine. But the dopamine actually kicks in before the porn session, once you start watching it. So someone might find out their wife's not going to be home, or I'm just taking someone out, I'm taking the kids out for a thing, and you're on your way home in the car, or it's 4 o'clock and no one's ever home anyway, and that's what time you get home from work because you're a tradie, or it's first thing in the morning when you wake up, because that's what you do every day or every couple of days or whatever the cycle is. So your brain knows your cycle. Your cycle will get shorter and shorter and shorter. So you go from once a month to once a fortnight to once a week to every day to a couple of times a day, because the brain gets the hit of the drugs. So the dopamine is the novelty drug. It's the addictive one. The serotonin is the happy hormone. So you get to feel happy and good whilst watching porn, obviously, but it's a chemical reaction. It's not just, oh, I like seeing boobs, it's an actual chemical reaction that's happening that's making you feel good. Then you've got the oxytocin. Now, this is the one I'm going to be doing more research on, because this is the bonding hormone. It's produced in high levels when you have sex, when you pat your dog, when you connect with your children. It's produced in high levels with women who've just given birth. It's so they can bond with the watermelon that just split them in two, right? So this is the bonding hormone. So when you watch porn, you are bonding to the acts that you are watching. Now, gone are the days of Debbie Does Dallas and you've got one DVD in your cupboard and it comes out, when you're hungover. That doesn't happen anymore. And so back in the day when we used to go to Sexpo, there'd be, porn stars there and people knew who they were, right? Because they were, in the industry. Whereas now it's just fast forward. What can I get for free off Google? Like there's no, and a lot of it is, amateur porn. People are watching real people on cameras. So there's no bonding to artists, let's call them, technicians anymore. There's bonding to the acts. So that's where the fetishes start coming in. And, I treat so many men who are so disturbed by the fact that they're now watching gay porn and trans porn. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but if you're a straight man, that's a major concern for them, right? And so you start to do things and watch things that you're not used to. And so when you get this hit of all of these chemicals and hormones, you then get a crash. Now, the crash normally occurs when you ejaculate. All right. So when you ejaculate, you go into what we call an ejaculation hangover. The ejaculation hangover is, men know this feeling. It's like, I can relax, I've had relief, there's tension relief, I can go to sleep, rolling over after sex, all of that. Ejaculation hangover is when your testicles are actually trying to produce all the sperm that you just lost, and they require energy to do that. Just like your thymus will shut you down if you're getting a cold and you feel like you're being hit by a truck on that first day of a cold, The thymus is doing that to you to shut your body down to actually get ready to fight the bacteria that's just entered the war zone, right? And so your testicles require energy to produce a million gazillion more sperm because you just ejaculated. So that's part of it. The other part of it is you're losing your sexual energy through chi, right? Through bodily fluids, you lose chi. Has everyone heard of semen retention? Semen retention refers to retaining your seed. So keeping your sperm in your body because it's your life force energy. And it is. You lose sexual energy and you lose energy in general when you ejaculate. All right. You'll also lose nutrients and minerals. You lose half your daily zinc. Zinc is the number one supplement for men because we don't get it from, we don't produce it in the body. You have to get it from foods, and we're not getting that from the foods. Men mostly have zinc deficiencies because they keep ejaculating. All right. And if you're not on zinc supplements, that's something you need to look at. All right. Zinc produces, muscle mass and testosterone, and all of the manly stuff is based on zinc. Right. So you're reducing all of it. So when you crash, you also produce prolactin. Prolactin is a hormone that causes erectile dysfunction. So every time you have this hit from the porn, you have a crash that damages the body, and the crash also causes erectile dysfunction. You're also looking at different videos all the time, and I call this the greyhound race, right? I got shown this years ago psychically. The greyhound race is the little white rabbit that you're chasing that isn't real. The dogs aren't meant to catch it, right? It's not real. They don't know that. They're like, woof, off we go. They're trained to chase this thing. And so that's what porn addiction is like. You're chasing this little white rabbit. You're never, ever, ever going to scratch that itch, because your brain, what it does is once you get all these chemicals and hormones in there, it starts to change itself because it has to accommodate all the extra chemicals and hormones that are flooding in the body. So when it does that, it changes itself, and then it requires that level of chemicals and hormones the next time you do it. And the next time you do it, it ups the ante until you get to a point where your dopamine receptors are all worn out and porn is boring. So you start, meeting people in toilets and, dating sites and cheating on your partner and going to sex workers. And that's where all of the moral stuff starts to come in. But the bonding hormone, I'll just touch on that again, is the oxytocin, is what is the reason why men are turning away from sex. I never, ever, ever thought I'd ever say that while I was on this planet. Right. So men used to always think with their second head and thinks with their dicks, and this has been an age-old thing. But what's happening now is you go to a bar, the guys don't talk to you because they've got no confidence, because they've got performance anxiety and they've got erectile dysfunction. So they're just catching up with quick, fucks on Tinder. And on the dating scene, no one's making any effort because they don't have the confidence. And that's where I come in. So I don't just work with the porn addiction. We retrain the brain, we help it heal, but we actually sort out your relationships as well. Because when you watch a shitload of porn, your subconscious mind, if you're having a chemical reaction, which you are, because that's what you're looking for, is the chemical reaction. So feeling horny and the hormones and the tingles and the goosebumps. If you're having a chemical reaction, your subconscious mind thinks that it's happening to you. Right? Just like if I sat here and cut up a lemon and talked about the lemon and made it all juicy and put it in my mouth and bit on it, a lot of people would salivate. And every time I tell that story, my glands go, there's no lemon, right? So you're having a chemical reaction, just like you'd cry at a movie, because you think it's happening to you. You think it's your dog that's caught in the fire or your child that's drowning. Right, so your subconscious mind thinks it's happening to you. So if you think back to all of the acts that you've seen on porn, your brain thinks you were there and that it happened to you. So then you turn to your wife or your partner or the girl on a dating scene, and it's vanilla sex, or it's just not giving you that rush, because it never will, because it can't. You can get lots of rushes out of sex if you get off porn. Sex is the opposite to porn. People are like, oh, it's all sexual and it's a sex addiction. And it's absolutely not. It's a neural addiction. You're not addicted to boobs and ass. You're addicted to the chemicals and hormones that keep flooding your body.
Wow. There was amazing. There's so many different ways that we could go with that information that you shared. But what I want to do is I want to touch on the comment that you made about porn addiction being actually worse than a heroin addiction. What's actually the mechanism with why you believe that it's worse?
So if you have a look online and Google porn versus heroin, you'll actually see some scans by Dr. I think it's Arman or Amen. I don't actually know how to say his name. And he's done lots of studies with brain scans. So you can actually see that online. It's also in my book. I've copied his stuff in there. The brain damage that occurs is the frontal lobe. The frontal lobe is the control panel of your personality. So it's your decision making, your focus, your memory, your concentration, your emotional expression comes from there. Depression and anxiety comes from there. Your mental health. So it's the control panel of your personality. So when men feel shame around this and they feel like they're a bad person, when they get to that point where it's like, I've lost control, I've lost money, I've lost my partner, I've lost my children. When it gets to that point, men start to blame themselves and they feel like a bad person. Now they're not. However, the part of the brain that gets affected is part of their identity. All right. And so when we say, we're going to get you off porn, you should see guys' faces. They're like, really? Like, I know it's damaging me. And I say to them, are you willing to give up the thing that's making you sick? Because it is making you sick. Right. So the damage at the frontal lobe is really, really bad. Right. And I've linked this to suicide in men, because if we look at men and how many men are killing themselves, and 80% of them are men, we have to ask why. And no one is asking why. It's all about mental health and beyond blue. And, you know, it's life is hard and technology makes it more stressful and we're so busy all the time. It's a load of shit. Like, yes, that's all true. But what's going on in the brain, right? And it's like in gridiron players, all right? They're all suffering major brain damage, and it's from the knocks that they keep taking in the game. But they keep playing the game, and the industry keeps covering it up, right? So there's brain damage occurring here, and it's causing suicide in men. I've also linked it to prostate cancer, because there's a whole lot of stuff going on. Every time you ejaculate, you lose selenium. Selenium keeps the prostate healthy. If you produce too much testosterone and too much oxytocin and too much dopamine, it ruins the prostate. All right, so there's a whole lot of stuff going on here. The other thing that happens in the brain is it decreases grey matter. Grey matter is responsible for your nervous system, your bodily functions and controls, your coordination and skills like that. So if you have a look online, you'll see that there's a heroin brain damage. And the other thing is, heroin goes on for how many years? You know, it could be a short-term thing. It could be they die because of the heroin addiction. But we're talking about 55-year porn addictions, 60-year porn addictions. I've treated men in their 80s for this. I've treated men in their 70s who cannot get an erection, haven't had an erection for 20 years, and they're still watching porn 2 hours a day.
Wow.
So, you know, the damage to the brain is incredible. And I can actually spot it when I'm talking to people, and I've dated guys, you know, since doing all of this work. If someone just keeps telling them the same story over and over, I'm like, do you watch porn? And they're like, yeah, why? And I'm like, you've got memory issues, right? So there's lots of signs there, and that's why we're taking this information now after 8 years of research and treating men, and I've spoken to over 25,000 men now. And so we're taking this information now to the women, right, to the couples, to the partners of porn addiction. The women need to understand this, because they don't know. It's the biggest secret on the planet, because I've never spoken to a man that actually told his partner exactly what he does in terms of the habit, the cycle, how often, what he's watching, how long he's been watching it for, and any behaviors that are linked in with that. Not one man on this planet that I have spoken to has ever told his partner, ever. And he doesn't even tell his mates, right? So it's a secret. Men don't even tell their partners that they come and see me because of that reason, because they don't want to say why. You know, but we're starting to see referrals come in now. So there's men having conversations in cars, and then they all come and see me, and they're all starting to refer each other and open up those lines of communication around this. Because if you don't talk about it in front of your mates, everyone thinks that it's just them.
Yeah, always. Of course. And that's the crazy thing about it, is that it's such a huge problem, and it's so common within us men, as you know. But it's like, it feels like it's a giant white elephant. And it's interesting, like, whenever I have covered this topic on my podcast, I think to myself, like, there is going to be so many people so many men that resonate with this, but I'll never ever find out exactly who, but they know who they are. And there's so many of them that would have probably felt the shame, felt the guilt of being like, fuck, that's me. And like, shit, I need to do something about it. And it's just like, I find it so fascinating of how it's such a massive problem. It's like that giant white elephant in the room that is happening to so many men, but they're, you know, it's almost like they're not really doing anything about it.
No. So the research originally back in 2018 came back that 97% of men surveyed were watching porn regularly, so once a month or more. And so I knew it was nearly 100%. And when I started to talk about this online, I got attacked by all of the men in the male leaders in the coaching field, and that saying I was bogus and I was shaming men. And I'm like, I'm helping the men. We have to talk about this. And so I got attacked really badly. And then when I launched the results, everyone called it a bogus survey and that it wasn't done by peer review and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, okay, I just did a survey. We surveyed 250 men, and they were from all over the world. They weren't my clients. They were, you know, on LinkedIn. They were from Snapchat. They were from Facebook and Instagram. They were from everywhere. And it was 97% of men. And so it has dropped down now to 87%. So we're getting there, and everyone knows about NoFap. And if you follow NoFap on Instagram, you'll see that they actually have no idea what they're talking about. It's a really good intention, but it doesn't work, because if you try and take heroin away from a drug addict, it puts them into scarcity and they come down hard. And it doesn't work because your brain is in what we call hypofrontality. So you're oversensitive to triggers. Like you said, when you first came off it, you were like, oh my God, you know, you go to the supermarket and there's someone in bathers, and then there's like something online, and you get triggered really easily. And that's because of all of the testosterone that you have produced through all of the masturbation and all of the porn watching. Your brain actually is looking for the drugs, right? If you went to the supermarket and there were people standing around with little bags of heroin, and you had a heroin addiction, you'd be like, oh my
This
God.
shop is amazing.
Right? Yeah. It's like, woo, I have that and I have that. So you can't just go cold turkey a lot of the times without the understanding of what you're actually facing here and how your brain works. And so the way that we actually fix that and sort out that brain addiction and change the neural pathways is through masturbation.
Right. So my next question, Catherine, and this is one that is particularly worrying to me as a parent, and my son, who is 9 years old, is obviously coming to an age where they're starting to get pretty curious about sex, and which is fine. He'll ask me questions about, you know, sex and sexual orientated things and what's a penis, what's a vagina, and all those kinds of questions, those curious natured questions. But my concern as a parent, and as I'm sure there's lots of other concerned parents out there, is that kids around that age are obviously hanging around their friends who have older sisters, older brothers, and are sharing with their brothers information that then obviously passes on to my son about stuff that they shouldn't be hearing about, knowing about. And obviously with online gaming being so prevalent now and having access to the internet, it's a real worry of mine for my kids to be subject to stuff like porn and sexual related images and stuff that they should not be ever seeing at that age. You know, what's your take on that?
Yeah. So my first book, What No One Told You About Pornography, is available on ebook only, and that has a foreword in it that talks to parents on how to actually have these conversations with teens. If you're having a conversation with your teen for the first time around pornography, it's too late. It's not too late, but it's too late, right? So you have to start talking to children. Let's just talk sex education rather than pornography, right? Sex education it's got the worst. It's like, well, this is what my mum and dad did, or this isn't what my mum and dad did. And no one ever teaches you how to talk to your children about this stuff.
It's so
shit. I grew up with, I got a book shoved in my face from the teacher's library. So it had very little pictures and stuff. And I was in grade 5 or 6. I was homesick one day, and I still remember her giving it to me, my mum saying, read this and let me know if there's any questions. And that's it. I didn't have any questions because I was so mortified. And then we had to attend a group thing in grade 5 where, at school where do I come from was played, and then they asked questions but it's important that you understand that sex education begins with bodily functions. I have a vagina. It does this. It can do this when I'm older. What is an orgasm? What is masturbation? Why does it feel good when I touch myself? We're not even talking about sex yet, right? So you've got to have that stuff going on. They're staring at you in the shower. They're asking you questions. Give them the answers, age appropriate, but give them the answers. And then you'll see them just tune out. If you add some stuff in, they'll just tune out. But pornography is so important because they're seeing it accidentally a lot of the time. They're seeing it on their devices. It's all interwoven into Fortnite and all the games and stuff. The kids are addicted to their phones and devices already, and that's a gaming addiction, which is almost the same as a porn addiction. So it affects the brain in the same way. So you've got this porn in your pocket opportunity for children. And, back in the day, we used to, anything that was rude. Like my mum had a book once, and I think there was like a picture of a woman's boob in it. And we were like at that book all the time, showing our friends, this is amazing, and someone dropped a porn mag into the duck pond, and we dried it out and we had it at the front, and mum and dad busted us and we ran down the park. And, so it's part of growing up. So you are going to see it. But you have to arm your children with the information of what it does if you look at it all the time, right? And yes, you can go down the moral perspective and talk about consent and boundaries, and that's all very important in terms of how boys treat you, how girls treat you, what to expect, what you're prepared to do, and being able to communicate those boundaries. That's super important, because pornography is turning the world upside down. And I've got a chapter in my book called The Seething Core of Society, because it absolutely is. Because it's getting into everything. It's getting into our children's lives, and there's sex trafficking, and there's young girls now who are being asked to perform anal before they've even kissed someone, right? And it's happening at schools. It's happening behind shelter sheds. Whereas we used to be like, do you want to hold my pinky finger behind the shelter sheds? We didn't even know what penises were back then, when we were in primary school. So it's important that you start conversations at a very young age, when they're out of nappies and they're starting to play with their bits, or they're starting to stare at you. Then you start the education there, right? And then you just throw in some things around, there's stuff you might see as you get older online and on devices, and you need to maybe come and tell me that you've seen it, because it can be traumatizing, and most of the time it will be if it's a child under the age of 15. And a lot of the porn, I think people just don't get what the porn is these days, because I was born in the 70s, and porn was about dressing up in a rabbit suit and pretending you were a teacher or a cop, right? There was really bad acting, and that's what porn was back in the 80s, right? But if you look online now, it's not that. And there's a lot of violence, and there's a lot of, just no consent, right? And it's women being treated and choked and spanked and whatever. And as a woman, personally, not professionally, I have experienced plenty of men. Your first time you're having sex with them, they're choking you, they're slapping you, they're spitting on you. It's like, what is even happening right now? Right? So the mums, this is why I need to go to the women. The mums need to stop being so naive. You either need to go and have a look at porn and see exactly how bad it is, just once, right? And dive in there, and then start educating your children around it, because they are going to see it, because we all saw it, right? So they will see it. So you've just got to have those conversations around it of how damaging it is to the brain. And if you aren't telling your teenage sons, and you can get my ebook, right? If you're not telling them that they're going to lose their penis reactivity, then you're not having the right conversation. All right. So that 17-year-olds are impotent. I speak to 60% of my following on Instagram that message me are under 17. I can't treat them. I can't do anything. That's why I've set up my website so that everyone can get stuff for free, because that's where I direct the teenagers. These are 12 and 13-year-olds who are already addicted to porn, and they're reaching out and they're saying, my penis doesn't work anymore. I'm like, do you know what impotence is? No. Has anyone spoken to you about porn or masturbation? No. Right? So I don't want this burden on my shoulders of educating all of the children and the teens around sex and around porn and around erectile dysfunction. and the brain damage that it causes. Right? If you want your kid to do well in school, start talking to them about pornography, because it's going to damage their brain. And it's the girls as well. It's not just the boys now. The girls think it's normal to watch it, and they're all addicted as well. I don't treat the women, but it's 30% of the traffic on Pornhub, that's just one site, is women.
Wow. That's terribly worrying about the young age. And tell me, Catherine, is there a correlation with the age? And I'm sure that even if there isn't data, it's a case of the younger that someone gets addicted to porn, the actual worse it becomes.
Absolutely. So when people say to me, oh, my child won't get access to porn and I watch them on their devices and blah, blah, blah. I treat men in their 40s and 50s, right, when the internet wasn't around, who saw porn when they were 5 to 8 years old. Okay, so we didn't have access to it back then like you do now, and they still had access to it all the time. Now, back then, normally there was a step parent or an uncle or someone else involved who was actually influencing that, and there's some trauma around that. But yes, so the average age that kids are seeing it now is between 8 and 11.
Oh, fuck.
And by the time they're 18, 97% of boys have watched porn. 50% of those boys are watching it daily. So 50% of 18-year-olds are watching it daily, right? So it's the younger you see it, there's normally trauma associated with it. There's normally sexual abuse, and that's how grooming occurs. So the friend of the family or the uncle or whatever, here's a porn mag, look at this, right? So it excites, because we're born sexual beings. We have Kundalini in us right from the word go. Right? We know our penises and we know our vaginas, and we know when we rub up on things it feels good, or we touch ourselves it feels good, but we don't understand it because it's got nothing to do with sex. It's just our bodies and our functions. But when someone shows you images at that age, it's absolutely traumatic. But those kids don't know that, and they get excited about it, right? They feel a bit yucky, but they get excited, and then they get excited. That's the dopamine. The dopamine kicks in. Right, and that's how grooming starts. Is they hand over the porn. They start saying how nice people are. They start giving you compliments. Then the sexual abuse occurs. So anyone that watches, anyone that's been sexually abused as a child will always be overly sexual for the rest of their lives. They'll always want to watch more porn. They'll always want to get more massages that are sensual. They'll go to sex workers. It's just what happens until you balance out that, the sacral chakra and all the sexuality stuff that's happened because they were exposed to it too young.
Right. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh man, I don't even know. I don't even know what the next question is, because there's so many questions that I want to ask. But I think, as a man, I would like to know, and I probably know what the answer is, but it's worth asking still anyway, is there a healthy consumption of girls in bikinis? Is that considered porn? Like, what's the definition with like a sexual related image or a video versus pornography? Yep. Is there a kind of clear distinction?
There used to be. Is my microphone still working? Can I just check?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. There used to be, if it was sexual images, whether it's a magazine or a video, it didn't matter. As long as, if people were nude and doing things to each other, then that was classified as porn, which is the most obvious answer. But these days, so if you don't have a porn addiction and you've never watched porn, if you saw someone on Instagram, with the boobs out and all the things, then it wouldn't be the same trigger as it would be for someone who watched porn. And so if you masturbate to it, though, we now classify it as porn. So erotic fiction, OnlyFans, Instagram models, and TikTok can be classified as porn, especially when we're doing the work to try and get you off porn. So we get the guys to delete everything. Right, all of the images and the stuff on their phones, and then the access to sites and all of the Instagram accounts, because it triggers them. Someone else might not be as triggered because they've never watched porn, so they might look at her and go, "Oh God, what's she doing? Like, does her mum know she's doing this?" kind of thing. Like, have some respect for yourself, woman. That's what a man that sits in his evolved energy and doesn't watch porn, he looks at women like that in that way. He might admire it and think it's like, whoa, that's all right. But if he's not then triggered to go and masturbate, then it's not classified as porn. Does that? It's a grey area. But if you're watching anything, I have had men contact me and say that they masturbate over my photos. I've had guys tell me they masturbate over their friends' photos on Facebook. On dating sites, I've had guys tell me they're masturbating over my photos. So is it classified as porn? No, but it's same.
Yeah. So what would you say, Catherine, would be some simple strategies for the people out there, the guys out there that are in the position where they have now worked out that they do have a porn addiction because they're certainly watching porn related material probably a lot more frequently than once per month. I remember me sharing in a post saying in one of my podcasts, and you actually corrected me, which I enjoyed you doing, and I think I said something to the effect of just don't do it. And I think was that what it is that I said?
I can't
Just
remember.
do the whole. I think it was maybe like the cold turkey thing, like just don't, just like swap it for something else. And then you mentioned how that's not the right thing to do, and I found that it was effective for me because I'm a little bit off or on kind of personality. If I like put my mind towards something, I'll be able to do it. So I did the cold turkey thing, and I found that was useful. But what would you suggest are some more effective strategies for those men out there that would like to not be addicted to porn?
I think the difference there is that you had your why. You already worked out that it was causing you brain damage. So you had a reason to stop. And it might be your kids, it might be your wife, that type of thing. So it's you were able to do it on your own, which you can do. It's not impossible. But if I'm trying to just get the coaches and the practitioners and doctors especially to dig a little deeper with this in terms of the mind-body connection. So because if, let's say, you went cold turkey and you were triggered, because what happens is when you stop watching porn, your sexual energy dives. Your energy dives as well. You feel really tired and you don't feel like doing anything, right? A couple of days after we're not watching porn, you'll start to dive. So then you're like, oh, that's a relief. I don't feel like masturbating. I don't feel like having sex. And, there's no triggers. But what happens is men have connected masturbation to porn. So when you take away porn, and if you take away masturbation with it, you're actually throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Because you're putting your brain into scarcity, just like if I go on a diet. I went on a diet once. I did some Herbalife stuff, right? By that night, I was craving sweets and I was eating cake and lollies, and I don't normally do that, right? So my brain went into like, this is,
what the
we
fuck
can't
are you
do
doing
this
to me?
anymore. Yeah. So my brain went into scarcity, even though I wasn't a big on sweets either. So we call it the no-fat diet, right? Because you're putting your brain into scarcity, you're getting it to just stop. And if you're coming down off a daily habit or even more than that, then it's like coming down off heroin, right? And so everyone's seen heroin come down. There's vomiting and there's shakes and there's DTs, all the things, right? So it is a detox. And if you know how to support your body in that detox, then great. But you have to start realizing that it's your body that needs to help, not just your mindset. That's my point of what I said to you, right? Because if you don't change the way that you masturbate, you will always link porn to masturbation, and it will always be a trigger. So if you're turned on, one goes with the other. And so you're like, oh, I shouldn't masturbate because then I'll watch porn, right? So what I do is we do conscious self-pleasure. It's the cure to everything. We do two things. There's Kundalini activation, which is done in here. And there's treatments that do that. When you activate Kundalini, which are the two snakes caught up at the base of your spine, it's the sexual energy, it's a Sanskrit term. And when you activate Kundalini, it goes up the back of the spine and the neck, and the body starts to move and shake, right? And when we do that, it's like a phenomenon. Men don't feel like watching porn again. First session, it's gone. The urge is gone. However, the urge to masturbate and have sex is also gone temporarily. And so I make them masturbate, right? And you'd think that men like to masturbate for homework. They don't, right? Because they don't like doing it my way, and they don't like doing it under certain guidelines and pressure, right? But what we're trying to do is reprogram the brain. We're trying to rewire your brain around porn and masturbation go together. So porn, masturbation, orgasm, and ejaculation are 4 links in the chain. Take out porn, you have to connect the other 3 links back up. Otherwise, you'll be triggered every time you want to masturbate, or you get an erection, or you get horny, right? So once we link those 3 back up, there's training, there's masturbation, like guidelines, what to do. We activate the limbic system, which is your arousal system. So men have gone from like, this is your sexual energy, this is your hormones. Men think they have these higher sex drives. They absolutely don't. They're running on a brain addiction, right? So this is your eyes and your brain have been your sex drive. Sexual energy is what's happening in the body. It's the limbic system. It's the perfume that you smell. It's the 5 o'clock on a beer o'clock on a Friday, and it's the sun's out. It's going down to the beach. It's all the sensory perception. That's what arousal is about. And so you brutalize that system when you watch porn, right? And so men are watching porn without an erection. No one ever sits down with a raging hard on, right? So they're watching porn to get an erection, to then ejaculate and have an orgasm, right? And so it's literally flogging a dead horse. You're saying to your penis, come on, come on, come on, come on, let's watch this. Oh, this isn't doing it for me. Where's the stimulation? Come on, penis. Oh, I'm nearly there. Yes, now I've got an erection, right? Now I need to come, right? So that's what's happening in the body. So we have to reverse all of that conditioning and training. So you do it for 10 minutes every second day for the first week, and then there's 90 days of masturbation homework. And so we reduce the amount of times that you're masturbating because we don't want you to ejaculate frequently. Then we increase the time. So you need to do it for 10 minutes, then 20 minutes, then 30 minutes, then 40 minutes, up to an hour. Then eventually, once you've got the erections and your limbic system is working and you know how to use the energy, which is the microcosmic orbit, that's a whole other conversation. Sexual channels run along there. We teach you about your chakras, your breath work, closing your eyes, getting sensory stuff going, so essential oils, putting on coconut oil, touching yourself at the back of your neck, top of your head, getting the energy to move around your body, putting your feet together, putting a pillow under your knees. So all of these things help with getting the flow of energy around the body. And that's what sexual energy is. It's energy. That's what orgasm is. It's a buildup of energy just below your belly button. And that's what makes you orgasm. Orgasm is meant to travel up through your body. Men are having localized orgasms where they're squeezing and tensing and they're trying to keep their erections, and then they have the orgasm and they close down. We're trying to teach guys to open up, to do the breath work, to have the full body orgasms. And then eventually we teach you how to have an orgasm without ejaculation. So that's taking out the other link in the chain. So that's then semen retention. So you're having multiple orgasms and orgasms without ejaculation, both while you're masturbating, because that's where the training starts. You can't just have sex with someone and go, okay, let's do tantra and let's have, orgasms without ejaculation. This is a military exercise. You have to train every single day around this to get your body back to what it should be and what it never was. All right, so I'm going to take you back to when you were 19 and there was no such thing as porn. So your erections, you got morning wood, you're like triggered by sensory stuff. You can hold your erections for a long time. You can hold your orgasm for a long time. You know how to edge. You become a sex god, basically. So that's what I help men do. We don't just get you off porn. We help you fix it all. I also have products and supplements that we help with the brain. So the trick is to learn how to masturbate. And the good news is I'm going to give your readers my 2-week challenge for free today, which is the guidelines around this to start off with, to see where you're at. It comes with a tracking sheet, so you get to have a look at what you're doing, and you'll start to see yourself, even without my coaching or interaction, you'll see the patterns and behaviors that you're having. And if you masturbate without porn, I guarantee you're going to have erection issues. And so that then we address all of that as well.
Oh,
are you okay?
What an awesome chat that was. And I can't believe it's already been 1 hour because there's so much stuff that we
can do another one.
Yeah, I think that would be awesome if you're interested in doing that. I think there's going to be a lot of good feedback from this, probably secret feedback, because probably not many people are going to reach out and be like, oh, that was exactly me. But I know that this information is going to be well received by so many people. So I just want to thank you, Catherine, for your time and sharing with us your knowledge as well. So if if your information highly resonates with certain individuals, where can they go to find out more about you? Where can they do some work with you?
Sure. So the business is Integrated Men's Health, and I'm all over social media, Snapchat. A lot of people do contact me on Snapchat because it's the private conversation. So you can get me there. You can get on integratedmenshealth.com.au. All of my free ebooks are on there. There's tons of videos. You can go on YouTube and see hundreds of my videos. It's all for free. So I give everyone as much as I can for free. The 2-week challenge is normally $17. I'll give you that for free today. So I'll give Daniel the link so that he can do that. The other one I just wanted to talk about was my book, The Uncensored Threat, and you actually get the 2-week challenge for free in that as well. And that's got all of the information written down on how to actually do the challenge in great detail. They can jump on my website and talk to me there. My phone number's everywhere. People can message me on Facebook. Don't add me as a friend on Facebook before you message me, because I don't add, I won't add people all the time, but if you want to talk to me there, you can. I'm pretty open. My phone's on silent 24/7 because I'm international, and people like to message me at 2 o'clock in the morning and, call me when they need a massage and all the things. So yeah, so I'm everywhere, and I'm happy to help people if they want to have a discussion around this. And I do realize, and I do hold space for men that have never spoken to anyone about this before. They've also been sexually abused. I specialize in that field as well. I work with erectile dysfunction. We help you with that. Trauma, mental health, it's also one of my specialties. So, if guys are coming in for mental health, I ask them if they watch porn, because it's always that. We can't help you do anything else. If you're going on retreats and you're beating your chest around a fire and you're crying and you're having man hugs and all of that, that's amazing. If you're watching porn, your brain can't evolve past where it's at. In fact, it's actually diminishing. Okay, so just keep that in mind, that if you've got all these other problems in your life, get rid of porn and just see what happens. Because I can almost I'll guarantee you that everything else will shift.
Wow. On that note, let's wrap it up. Thank you so much again, Catherine. The work that you're doing is so very important for us men all around the world, and we need more people like you that are devoting their life to learning information and sharing their knowledge to make a massive difference. So again, thank you so much for your time. It was awesome.
You're welcome. Anytime.
I'll share your links and everything underneath at the bottom of this video once we finish up. But yeah, it was great. Thank you again, Catherine.
Great. Thanks, Daniel.
See you later.